2015, a man woke up to a strange post-it note sitting on his desk. On it was a to-do list that he didn't recognize in handwriting that didn't look like his. Since he was up late the night before doing some work, he assumed he must have written out the list when he was half asleep and kind of forgot about it, so he just crumples it up and throws it away. 2 weeks later, he wakes up to dozens of these post-it notes all over his wall, and they're all blank except for one that, in the same weird handwriting, says, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you." Now feeling totally freaked out that some crazy person is crawling around his apartment at night, he starts looking for signs of a break-in, but there aren't any. Instead of calling the police, he shares his experience on Reddit asking for help, and one user's comment literally saves his life. Turns out the man was writing the notes to himself and then forgetting, because his brain was slowly dying due to a carbon monoxide leak that was only discovered because a user suggested he install a detector. This is why you should always trust your gut. In the 1970s, a young couple decided to go for a late-night hike in the woods. A couple minutes into their walk, and the man remembers thinking something's not right. He tells his girlfriend, but they just decide to ignore it and keep going, until he steps on something that felt really soft, like it was alive. Before he has a chance to see what he stepped on, they hear all this rustling in the bushes next to them, and they bolt. Years later, that couple turns on the TV, and a death row inmate who's about to be executed is being interviewed. And they ask him, "Was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed?" He responded, "Yes, one time. I was in the woods, and a couple walked through, and the man actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. I was hiding in the bushes just a few feet away. They didn't see me." That couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy.
This is a crazy story time of when I used to work at Tilly's, so buckle up. This middle-aged mom walks in the store, right? And she just starts walking around the men's section and literally just grabbing everything she sees. I mean, she's not even looking at the sizes. So we thought that was weird, so we went up and asked her if she needs any help, and of course she said no. Then she decides that she wants to try everything on. So I unlocked a room for her, and then I told her that she can only have 7 at a time, and she literally had a million things, and she just ran in, shut the door, and cut me off. So we started to get suspicious, so I started talking over my little headset thingy and telling the people around the store what's going on. We knocked on the door like 3 times, asking if she needed help or needed any other sizes, and of course she just said no again. Then she comes barging out and literally runs to the front door and just leaves. So I walk in to see, and there's literally a bloody tampon on the floor. 2 days later, she comes back to the store?
This is why you should never watch my videos before going to bed. In 1986, a young girl opens her closet to find a man wearing a dress and holding an axe. He grabs her and ties her up, and then walks around the house and does the same thing to the rest of her family. While the guy is ransacking their house, one of the kids breaks free, runs next door, and tells his neighbor. The neighbor calls the cops show up, the family's saved, but the guy is nowhere to be found. The family leaves the house and stays with relatives in hopes that they'll catch this guy before they have to go back. But after a few weeks, they haven't caught him, there aren't any leads, and they say, you know what, we'll go back to our house anyways. As the family's pulling back into their driveway, the father looks up at one of the windows and sees for a split second the head of the man with the dress in their bedroom. They call the police, who go in and find pennies glued to the ceiling and weird writing all over the house, but they can't find this crazy guy. Until one of the officers found a secret crawl space in the basement, where psychotic killer Danny LaPlante had been living for 2 months.
Crazy story time about how my mom kidnapped my sister. So my mom and dad split whenever I was really young. And at this time, they were always in and out of court battling for custody over my sister and I. Well, the one day my dad drives my mom downtown to the courthouse because she didn't have a ride. And before she gets out of the car, she's like, "Can I give the girls a hug?" And my dad was like, "Yeah, go ahead." Little background information, I was more of a daddy's girl. My sister was more of a mommy's girl, which is probably the reason why she took her. I was sitting by the window, my sister was sitting in the middle seat. So she gives me a hug. Next thing I know, my sister's seatbelt was unbuckled and my mom was running across the street with her in the middle of downtown. Didn't even look for cars. So my dad got out of the car, ran over, grabbed her, picked both of them up, and walked over to the sidewalk, and my mom was screaming bloody murder. So this guy called the cops, and my dad was trying to show them custody papers because he had full custody. But the cop knew my mom, so he let her take my sister. We got her back, but I didn't see this bitch for like 4 months. Storytime about how I tried to get my boyfriend back for cheating on me, but I ended up with an STD instead. So a little background information. I was dating this guy for about 7 months whenever I was in high school. And I would always hang out with him, his guy friends, and their girlfriends. Well, the one night we were hanging out at my house and he kept checking my phone. And he said it was because he was waiting for his mom to text my phone. So then he had to go to the bathroom and he asked to take my phone with him. And I said no because that's weird as fuck. So while he's in the bathroom, I get a text from a random number. And it's a bunch of videos that my boyfriend took of him doing the nasty with other girls. And there were like 15 videos, all different girls. So by this time he's been in the bathroom for like 15 minutes. So I go to confront him while he's in the bathroom, like I do not care at this point. And he's gone. My bathroom window is wide open. My curtains are broken. So then I start to text all of his best friends. Like for part 2. Part 2. So it turns out the person who sent it to me was one of the girls in my friend group. So at that point, every single person in that friend group was dead to me and I needed to get every single one of them back. So like I said, I started texting all my ex's best friends and I asked every single one of them if they wanted to hook up. 4 of them said yes, the other 3 just blocked me. And the 4 who said yes all had girlfriends in our friend group. Well, the girls in my friend group had no idea, so they invited me to their party. And at that party, it was my mission to do the dirty with every single one of those guys. Well, there was this bathroom in the basement, which nobody knew about except the girl whose house it was. So one after the other, I did the dirty with every single one of them in that bathroom. And I made sure to snap a picture or take a video, so that way I could send it to my boyfriend. I know, I'm crazy, get over it. Well, in the morning, my ex's closest best friend came over. Well, I did the dirty with him too, because my ex hated him being around me, because he was known for screwing other people's girlfriends. Okay, there's gonna be a part 3.
When Brandon and I first started dating, we had prom the next week and weren't going together. We just both had plans to go with other people before we met. Coincidentally, we were also in the same prom group, so we had to watch each other with other people the whole night. It was a great bonding experience. We didn't discuss what was gonna happen, but we just both pretended like we weren't a thing. It was just easier. But by the time we got to the dance, I thought that he would maybe give in. Mind you, this is also the night after our first date. So I'm still waiting for this validation of him even liking me. But instead, he acted like he didn't know me. The whole night. So I assumed that it was over. He didn't love me. It was all a show. Until the last slow song of the night. Play It Again by Luke Bryan. I was with the girls until I suddenly felt hands around my waist. It was Brandon. I forgot all about feeling alone in that moment. He can play hard to get, but if he doesn't give you the world, he needs to get with it.
Part 3. So a week later, I started having some problems down there. So I had my mom take me to the doctors. Turns out I have a fucking STD. And nobody knew about it, at least not yet. Well, my boyfriend came over that same day asking if we could get back together. So I thought, what an even better way to get back at him. Give him what I have. Mind you, I was still hooking up with all 4 of his best friends. And then like 2 weeks later, my boyfriend started talking to me about how he was also having problems down there. And I was like, oh, maybe you should go to the doctors. So after he went to the doctors, he texts me and he goes, yeah, I have an STD. So then I sent him all the videos of his best friends and I said, yeah, I hope you enjoy living with that for the rest of your life. And I also gave it to all of his friends and then they spread it to their girlfriends. Payback's a bitch.
Yes, this really did happen. In 2015, a man woke up to a strange post-it note sitting on his desk. On it was a to-do list that he didn't recognize in handwriting that didn't look like his. Since he was up late the night before doing some work, he assumed he must have written out the list when he was half asleep and kind of forgot about it, so he just crumples it up and throws it away. 2 weeks later, he wakes up to dozens of these post-it notes all over his wall, and they're all blank except for one that in the same weird handwriting says, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you." Now feeling totally freaked out that some crazy person is crawling around his apartment at night, he starts looking for signs of a break-in, but there aren't any. Instead of calling the police, he shares his experience on Reddit asking for help, and one user's comment literally saves his life. Turns out the man was writing the notes to himself and then forgetting, because his brain was slowly dying due to a carbon monoxide leak that was only discovered because a user suggested he install a detector.
Crazy ass story time about how my best friend's parents walked in on me sleeping with my best friend's brothers. And yes, I said brothers. So my freshman year, I became best friends with this girl. And she had 2 older, hot-ass brothers. One was in college, and one was a senior. Well, it was Christmas break, and her older brother from college was home. And my parents let me go with them to Florida for Christmas break. They had a super nice beach house, and I was sharing a room with my best friend. And the boys were sharing a room. And our room was connected because there was a bathroom in the middle. Well, my best friend got super sick the first 3 days of the trip, so she didn't do anything with us. So I was hanging out with the boys all the time. Well, the one night we were on the deck and we started to play Truth or Dare. And one of them asked, "Would you sleep with us?" And I said, yeah. So at around 3 a.m., I snuck into the room and things started to get real nasty. There are kids on this app, so just use your imagination. And things started to get really loud and we woke their parents up, like for part 2. Part 2. So we thought that we woke their parents up and we heard someone walking up the stairs. So I ran into the bathroom, hid, and they asked if everything was okay. And I was just like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I think I caught whatever my best friend has. So they went back downstairs and we thought they went back to sleep. They were never asleep. So we decided to go onto the deck and finish the nastiness that we were doing. And I was like, oh, okay, we don't have to be that quiet now. Because their bedroom was in the front of the house and the porch was on the back of the house. And we were on the 2nd floor, and below that there was another porch with a fire pit and everything. And I could see below us. Well, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw somebody walk into the house. But stupid me, I just ignored it. Not even a minute later, I hear the sliding door open. And I hear, and we all turn around and everybody's standing there. So they sent me home and told my parents. But I didn't get grounded because low-key my mom knew I was a hoe. Crazy story time about how my sister and I found out that we were hooking up with the same guy. So I was a freshman, my sister was a sophomore, and there was this really cute guy in her grade that I liked. But I could never find a way to talk to him because we weren't in the same grade and had none of the same classes. And my sister and I were not close at all. We didn't tell each other shit, we didn't really talk to each other or anything. So by that being said, we never told each other about the boys that we liked. We just didn't have that bond. Well, track season came around. So they called all the people down who wanted to do track, and I saw him walk past my classroom window, so I decided to go too. So I signed up for track, and him and I started to talk a little bit. We exchanged numbers, and he was popular, I wasn't, so he didn't want to be seen with me. So after attendance, we would go to this graveyard right by the track and hook up. Well, the next day we had a meet in our school. So him and I went to the graveyard, hooked up, and that's when it started getting crazy, for part 2. Part 2. So on our way back from doing our thing, we had saw a group of kids that were behind this bush and they were chiefing. And we didn't think that they saw us because we were like, oh, they're just smoking, whatever. So I go back to the meet, everything is good until the end of the meet. One of my best friends sends me this picture that I guess somebody posted on their story. And it was a picture of me and the kid hooking up. And next thing I know, my sister is blowing up my phone. And like I said, my sister and I didn't have a good bond, so I didn't give a shit what she had to say because I didn't know. So then I got home. And as soon as I walked into my room, my sister was literally waiting there for me. And she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Him and I are in a relationship. And I'm like, bitch, what the fuck? And she was like, well, it's on the down low, but we're in a relationship. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're a whore. So then she decides to drive both of us over to his house. So we all decided to just stay away from each other. But then they got back together. So I just figured that wasn't fair and I'm still hooking up with him while they're together.